Flick to link. Link to flick.
As a singer-songwriter, people often ask me about my influences, or as I like to call them, my sonic lineages. And I could easily tell you that I was shaped by the jazz and hip-hop that I grew up with, by the Ethiopian heritage of my ancestors, or by the 1980s pop on my childhood radio stations. But beyond genre, there is another question. How do the sounds we hear every day influence the music that we make? I believe that everyday soundscape can be the most unexpected inspiration for songwriting. And to look at this idea a little bit more closely, I'm going to talk today about three things: nature, language, and silence, or rather the impossibility of true silence. And through this, I hope to give you a sense of a world already alive with musical expression, with each of us serving as active participants, whether we know it or not. I'm going to start today with nature, but before we do that, let's quickly listen to this snippet of an opera singer warming up. Here it is. It's beautiful, isn't it? Gotcha. That is actually not the sound of an opera singer warming up. That is the sound of a bird, slowed down to a pace that the human ear mistakenly recognizes as its own. It was released as part of Peter Zok's 1987 Hungarian recording, The Unknown Music of Birds, where he records many birds and slows down their pitches to reveal what's underneath. Let's listen to the full-speed recording. Now let's hear the two of them together so your brain can juxtapose them. It's incredible. Perhaps the techniques of opera singing were inspired by birdsong. As humans, we intuitively understand birds to be our musical teachers. In Ethiopia, birds are considered an integral part of the origin of music itself. The story goes like this. 1,500 years ago, a young man was born in the empire of Aksum, a major trading center of the ancient world. His name was Yared. When Yared was 7 years old, his father died, and his mother sent him to go live with an uncle who was a priest of the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, one of the oldest churches in the world. Now, this tradition has an enormous amount of scholarship and learning, and Yared had to study and study and study and study, and one day he was studying under a tree when 3 birds came to him. One by one, these birds became his teachers. They taught him music. Scales, in fact. And Yared, eventually recognized as Saint Yared, used these scales to compose 5 volumes of chants and hymns for worship and celebration. And he used these scales to compose and to create an indigenous musical notation system. And these scales evolved into what is known as kanyat, the unique pentatonic 5-note modal system that is very much alive and thriving and still evolving in Ethiopia today. Now, I love this story because it's true at multiple levels. Saint Yared was a real historical figure, and the natural world can be our musical teacher. And we have so many examples of this. The pygmies of the Congo tune their instruments to the pitches of the birds in the forest around them. Musician and natural soundscape expert Bernie Krause describes how a healthy environment has animals and insects taking up low, medium, and high-frequency bands in exactly the same way as a symphony does. And countless works of music were inspired by bird and forest song. Yes, the natural world can be our cultural teacher. So let's go now to the uniquely human world of language. Every language communicates with pitch to varying degrees. Whether it's Mandarin Chinese, where a shift in melodic inflection gives the same phonetic syllable an entirely different meaning, to a language like English, where a raised pitch at the end of a sentence implies a question? As an Ethiopian American woman, I grew up around the language of Amharic, Amarinya. It was my first language, the language of my parents, one of the main languages of Ethiopia. And there are a million reasons to fall in love with this language. Its depth of poetics, its double entendre, its wax and gold, its humor, its proverbs that illuminate the wisdom and follies of life. But there's also this melodicism, a musicality built right in. And I find this distilled most clearly in what I like to call emphatic language. Language that's meant to highlight or underline or that springs from surprise. Take, for example, the word inde. Now, if there are any Ethiopians in the audience, they're probably chuckling to themselves because the word means something like no, or how could he, or no, he didn't. It kind of depends on the situation. But when I was a kid, this was my very favorite word. And I think it's because it has a pitch. It has a melody. You can almost see the shape as it springs from someone's mouth. Inde, it dips and then raises again. And as a musician and composer, when I hear that word, something like this is floating through my mind. Inde, inde. Or take, for example, the phrase for it is right or it is correct. Lekkino. Lekkino, it's an affirmation, an agreement. Lekkino, when I hear that phrase, something like this starts rolling through my mind. Lekkino. 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 And in both of those cases, what I did was I took the melody and the phrasing of those words and phrases, and I turned them into musical parts to use in these short compositions. And I like to write bass lines, so they both ended up kind of as bass lines. Now, this is based on the work of Jason Moran and others who work intimately with music and language. But it's also something I've had in my head since I was a kid. How musical my parents sounded when they were speaking to each other and to us. It was from them and from Amarinya that I learned that we are awash in musical expression. With every word, every sentence that we speak, every word, every sentence that we receive, perhaps you can hear it in the words I'm speaking even now. Finally, we go to the 1950s United States and the most seminal work of 20th century avant-garde composition, John Cage's 433, written for any instrument or combination of instruments. The musician or musicians are invited to walk onto the stage with a stopwatch and open the score, which was actually purchased by the Museum of Modern Art, the score, that is. And this score has not a single note written, and there is not a single note played for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. And at once enraging and enrapturing, Cage shows us that even when there are no strings being plucked by fingers or hands hammering piano keys, still there is music, still there is music, still there is music. And what is this music? It was that sneeze in the back. It is the everyday soundscape that arises from the audience themselves. Their coughs, their sighs, their rustles, their whispers, their sneezes, the room, the wood of the floors and the walls expanding and contracting, creaking and groaning with the heat and the cold, the pipes clanking and contributing. And controversial though it was, and even controversial though it remains, Cage's point is that there is no such thing as true silence. Even in the most silent environments, we still hear and feel the sound of our own heartbeats. The world is alive with musical expression. We are already immersed. Now, I had my own moment of, let's say, remixing John Cage a couple of months ago when I was standing in front of the stove cooking lentils. And it was late one night and it was time to stir, so I lifted the lid off the cooking pot and I placed it onto the kitchen counter next to me, and it started to roll back and forth making this sound. And it stopped me cold. I thought, what a weird, cool swing that cooking pan lid has. So, when the lentils were ready and eaten, I hightailed it to my backyard studio and I made this. Waiting for my bed dream, singing, swimming, over the sea. Now, John Cage wasn't instructing musicians to mine the soundscape for sonic textures to turn into music. He was saying that on its own, the environment is musically generative, that it is generous, that it is fertile, that we are already immersed. Musician, music researcher, surgeon, and human hearing expert Charles Lim is a professor at Johns Hopkins University, and he studies music and the brain. And he has a theory that it is possible that the human auditory system actually evolved to hear music because it is so much more complex than it needs to be for language alone. And if that's true, it means that we're hardwired for music, that we can find it anywhere, that there is no such thing as a musical desert, that we are permanently hanging out at the oasis, and that is marvelous. We can add to the soundtrack, but it's already playing. And it doesn't mean don't study music. Study music, trace your sonic lineages, and enjoy that exploration. But there is a kind of sonic lineage to which we all belong. So the next time you are seeking percussion inspiration, look no further than your tires as they roll over the unusual grooves of the freeway, or the top right burner of your stove in that strange way that it clicks as it is preparing to light. When seeking melodic inspiration, look no further than dawn and dusk avian orchestras, or to the natural lilt of emphatic language. We are the audience, and we are the composers, and we take from these pieces we are given, we make, knowing that when it comes to nature or language or soundscape, there is no end to the inspiration, if we are listening. Thank you.
Flick to link, a link to flick.
It's a download from BBC Learning English. To find out more,
My photo taste
visit
is the
our
Pinterest,
website.
because they are the best.
English from bbclearningenglish.com. Hello, I'm Neil and welcome to 6 Minute English, where we vigorously discuss a new topic and 6 related items of vocabulary.
And hello, I'm Rob. Today we're discussing vigorous exercise and whether adults take enough of it. Vigorous means using a lot of energy to do something.
So, how many steps do you do in a day, Rob?
How many steps? How should I know, Neil? It would be pretty hard to count them all.
Oh, come on, you can track steps on your phone. I do 10,000 a day, which is the magic number for keeping fit and healthy, apparently.
Not if you saunter, Neil, surely. Sauntering from the sofa to the fridge and back, or from the house to the car.
Well, I never saunter, Rob. Saunter means to walk slowly, and you'd have to make a lot of trips to the fridge to clock up 10,000 steps. To get some vigorous exercise, you need to get out and about, round the park at a brisk pace.
Brisk means quick and energetic, the opposite of sauntering. OK, well, perhaps you can tell me, Neil, how many people aged between 40 and 60 do less than 10 minutes brisk walking every month? Is it A, 4%, B, 14%, or C, 40%?
I'm going to say 4%, because 10 minutes is such a short amount of time.
Indeed. Now, I've got another question for you, Neil. why is exercise so important? Because it sounds pretty boring, counting steps, going to the gym, running on a machine.
Well, when you exercise, you stimulate the body's natural repair system. Your body will actually stay younger if you exercise.
That sounds good.
Exercise also lowers your risk of developing illnesses such as heart disease, cancer, and diabetes.
I'm getting a bit worried now, Neil. But I don't have enough time to do 1,000 steps every day. I'm far too busy.
Well, Rob, now might be a good time to listen to Julia Bradbury. She's a TV presenter and outdoor walking enthusiast who will explain how she builds walking into her busy life.
I will walk to meetings instead of catching a bus or getting a taxi or a car into meetings. And I will also, if I can't build that into my working day, if it's a day when I haven't got meetings and I'm maybe at home with the kids, I will take the time. I will take my kids out with the buggy, and I will definitely do 30, 40 minutes at least every day, going to the park, going to the shops, picking up my things en route, and really sort of building it into my life, taking the stairs and not taking lifts. All of these kinds of little decisions can incrementally build up to creating more walking time in your day.
So, if you build something into your day or your life, you include it from the beginning.
And Julia Bradbury has built walking into her day. Even though she's very busy too, Rob, you should learn from her.
So she walks instead of driving or taking the bus, and takes the stairs instead of the lift. I could do those things.
You could indeed. And before you know it, you'd be doing 10,000 steps because the amount of walking you do in a day builds incrementally.
Incrementally means gradually increasing in size. Okay, well, before I think that over, perhaps I could tell you the answer to today's quiz question.
Okay, you asked me how many people aged between 40 and 60 do less than 10 minutes brisk walking every month. The options were A, 4%, B, 14%, or C, 40%.
And you said 4%. But I'm afraid it's actually 40%, and that's according to the government body Public Health England here in the UK.
Oh dear, that's a lot more people than I expected. But it isn't that surprising. People in all age groups are leading more sedentary lifestyles these days. Our job is very sedentary, which means it involves a lot of sitting and not much exercise.
Well, I might just run on the spot while we go over the new vocabulary we've learned today.
Good plan. First up, we heard vigorous, which means using a lot of energy to do something.
Okay, I'm running vigorously on the spot.
Great example. And good to see you taking some vigorous exercise. Number 2, saunter means to walk slowly in a relaxed way. When I saw Rob, I sauntered over to say hello.
Hi, Neil. Number 3, brisk means quick and energetic.
It's important to take some brisk exercise every day.
Yes, and I'm beginning to realise that might be true.
Yep, I think you've done enough jogging for today, Rob. You've probably done about 100 steps.
Oh, is that all? Okay, number 4, if you build something into something, you include it from the beginning.
It's important to build regular exercise into your daily routine.
Very good advice. Number 5 is incrementally, which means gradually increasing in size.
Incremental is the adjective. The company has been making incremental changes to its pay structure.
Does that mean we're getting a pay rise?
I doubt it. And finally, number 6, sedentary, means sitting a lot and not taking much exercise. For example, it's bad for your health to lead such a sedentary lifestyle.
Duly noted, Neil. Well, it's time to go now, but if today's show has inspired you to step out and take more exercise, please let us know by visiting our Twitter, Facebook and YouTube pages and telling us all about it.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
6 Minute English from the BBC.
This is a download from BBC Learning English. This is a download from BBC Learning English. To find out more, visit our website.
6 Minute English
from bbclearningenglish.com.
Welcome to 6 Minute English, where we bring you an intelligent topic and 6 related items of vocabulary. I'm Neil.
And I'm Tim. And today we are talking about AI, or artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence is the ability of machines to copy human intelligent behavior. For example, an intelligent machine can learn from its own mistakes and make decisions based on what's happened in the past.
There's a lot of talk about AI these days, Neil, but it's still just science fiction, isn't it?
That's not true. AI is everywhere. Machine thinking is in our homes, offices, schools, and hospitals. Computer algorithms are helping us drive our cars. They're diagnosing what's wrong with us in hospitals. They're marking student essays. They're telling us what to read on our smartphones.
Well, that really does sound like science fiction. But it's happening already, you say, Neil?
It's definitely happening, Tim. And an algorithm, by the way, is a set of steps a computer follows in order to solve a problem. So, can you tell me, what was the name of the computer which famously beat world chess champion Garry Kasparov using algorithms in 1997? Was it A, HAL, B, Alpha 60, or C, Deep Blue?
I'll say Deep Blue, although I'm just guessing.
Was it an educated guess, Tim?
I know a bit about chess.
An educated guess is based on knowledge and experience and is therefore likely to be correct. Well, we'll find out later on how educated your guess was in this case, Tim.
Indeed. But getting back to AI and what machines can do, are they any good at solving real-life problems? Computers think in zeros and ones, don't they? That sounds like a pretty limited language when it comes to life experience.
You would be surprised at what those zeros and ones can do, Tim. Although you're right that AI does have its limitations at the moment. And if something has its limitations, there's a limit on what it can do or how good it can be.
Okay, well now it might be a good time to listen to Zubin Bahramani, Professor of Information Engineering at the University of Cambridge and Deputy Director of the Leverhulme Centre for the Future of Intelligence. He's talking about what limitations AI has at the moment.
I think it's very interesting how many of the things that we take for granted, we humans take for granted as being sort of things we don't even think about, like how do we walk, how do we reach, how do we recognize our mother, all these things. When you start to think about how to implement them on a computer, you realize that it's those things that are incredibly difficult to get computers to do, and that's where the current cutting edge of research is.
If we take something for granted, we don't realize how important something is.
You sometimes take me for granted, I think, Neil.
No, I never take you for granted, Tim. You're far too important for that.
Good to hear. So things we take for granted are doing everyday tasks like walking, picking something up, or recognizing somebody. We implement or perform these things without thinking, whereas it's cutting-edge research to try and program a machine to do them.
Cutting edge means very new and advanced. It's interesting, isn't it, that over 10 years ago a computer beat a chess grandmaster, but the same computer would find it incredibly difficult to pick up a chess piece.
I know, it's very strange. But now you've reminded me that we need the answer to today's question.
Which was, what was the name of the computer which famously beat world chess champion Garry Kasparov in 1997? Now, you said Deep Blue, Tim, and that was the right answer.
You see, my educated guess was based on knowledge and experience.
Or maybe you were just lucky. So, the IBM supercomputer Deep Blue played against US World Chess Champion Garry Kasparov in 2 chess matches. The first match was played in Philadelphia in 1996 and was won by Kasparov. The second was played in New York City in 1997 and won by Deep Blue. The 1997 match was the first defeat of a reigning world chess champion by a computer under tournament conditions.
Let's go through the words we learned today. First up was artificial intelligence, or AI, the ability of machines to copy human intelligent behavior.
There are AI programs that can write poetry.
Do you have any examples you can recite?
Afraid I don't. Number 2, an algorithm is a set of steps a computer follows in order to solve a problem. For example, Google changes its search algorithm hundreds of times every year.
The adjective is algorithmic. For example, Google has made many algorithmic changes.
Number 3. If something has limitations, there's a limit on what it can do or how good it can be. Our show has certain limitations. For example, it's only 6 minutes long.
That's right. There's only time to present 6 vocabulary items. Short but sweet.
And very intelligent, too. Okay, the next item is take something for granted, which is when we don't realize how important something is.
We take our smartphones for granted these days, but before 1995, hardly anyone owned one.
Number 5. To implement means to perform a task or take action.
Neil implemented some changes to the show.
The final item is cutting edge, new and advanced. This software is cutting edge.
The software uses cutting-edge technology.
Okay, that's all we have time for in today's Cutting Edge show. But please check out our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube pages.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
6 Minute English
from the BBC.
This is a download from BBC Learning English. To find out more, visit our website.
6 Minute English
from bbclearningenglish.com.
Flick to link. Link to flick.
As a singer-songwriter, people often ask me about my influences, or as I like to call them, my sonic lineages. And I could easily tell you that I was shaped by the jazz and hip-hop that I grew up with, by the Ethiopian heritage of my ancestors, or by the 1980s pop on my childhood radio stations. But beyond genre, there is another question. How do the sounds we hear every day influence the music that we make? I believe that everyday soundscape can be the most unexpected inspiration for songwriting. And to look at this idea a little bit more closely, I'm going to talk today about 3 things: nature, language, and silence, or rather the impossibility of true silence. And through this, I hope to give you a sense of a world already alive with musical expression, with each of us serving as active participants, whether we know it or not. I'm going to start today with nature.